Hey, it's Navid here, and in this session, we are going to talk about the pre-prompt power and specifically how to create AI copy that is on brand, on point, and totally you. I'm here with Lexi Hartmann, and I found her when I was searching for great speakers for the summit. I was looking around, and she has some really good stuff when it comes to AI. I think she came into this world a little bit similar to me with Jasper, and then now she's helping a lot of clients and students with this process. And I think it's pretty unique what we are going to cover here with her pre-prompt power formula, like diving into this as she's prepared actually a presentation, and then we'll show you a little bit behind the scenes of this. So with that being said, warm welcome, Lexi.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today. This is a great process, and I really can't wait to share it with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into it with the slide presentation, tell me a little bit about how you actually, with Jasper, how did you stumble across it? Like, what was your use case? I know you had like an agency and you were kind of
Yeah.
accidental copywriter, as you call yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Accidental AI copywriting expert,
Yeah.
I guess is what you would
Yeah.
call it. Yeah. So I actually ran into a situation. I have a content agency. We're a bilingual content agency. And I ran into a situation where I had this huge content order and I have my network of freelancers that I work with and my network of writers. And the one that was kind of responsible for a large amount of this content actually fell through sort of at the last minute. And I was on a deadline and I hate to miss deadlines. And so as I was, I was scrambling to write everything myself. I tapped into some copywriter friends and, we got the job done. But then literally immediately after that, I stumbled across an ad probably prompted by the fact that I had been searching for copywriting solutions for Jasper, which was actually Jarvis at the time. And I was like, okay, what is this thing? And I went into it and my mind was just absolutely blown. I mean, that was it was the early days, like way before ChatGPT. And I remember just the feeling of seeing this evolve for the first time and putting in a prompt and then having it spit out words on the screen. In hindsight, it wasn't really great copy, but in the moment at that time, it was just this, mind blowing thing. I remember I went to my dad's house and I showed my dad. He's like a real techie kind of guy, super early adopter of all kinds of things, and just basically geeked out over it. Well, the technology kept evolving and eventually it turned into Jasper. Obviously, I had signed up and I was using it primarily for my own brand because, as a lot of people know in the agency space, you'll do a great job with your clients, but you'll neglect your own content creation.
Right.
So this thing was all of a sudden solving these problems for me and helping me actually streamline my content process. And so over time, we just kind of dove deeper and deeper into it, into the point where, ChatGPT came out. And then we were, starting to work with clients who were aligned with AI, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, I think I was as early with Jasper with Conversion AI. I don't know if you were
Yes.
that early.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
that's basically when I got into it, and they quickly changed the name, and then they had to change it again. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, let's get into the presentation because I'm sure you cover what the pre-prompt is or like the
Hmm.
pre-prompt power, as you call it. I'm sure that's all
Yes.
covered there. So we can,
Hmm.
and I'll jump in if I
Yep.
have some questions for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just kind of barrel through, and you just let me know if you have any questions in the
For sure.
meantime, and we will go from there. So hang on tight while I share my screen here.
Yep, let's go.
All right. So as you said, this is pre-prompt power. So this is my process for creating AI copy that's on brand, on point, and totally you. As we already talked about, Naveed, I'm Lexi Hartmann. I'm the founder of iHeart Content. We're a boutique content agency. And like I said, I'm a self-professed AI geek and what I like to call an accidental AI copywriting expert. Like I just explained, I started using AI copywriting tools a long time ago, and it just kind of became this game to me to figure out how to get the best, most authentic sounding results from it. And, there was a ton of trial and error, but eventually we kind of stumbled across this process that wound up being super scalable and super reliable. And it really changed the face of our agency, truthfully. We started bringing on clients, like I mentioned, who were aligned with using AI. And it really helped this newish agency that I had hit the first multiple six-figure milestone and grow from there. So since ChatGPT came into the picture, we've kind of transitioned everything over to that for the most part. This process works across pretty much any large language model, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever it is. But the thing we're going to talk about today is this process that we have since refined over the course of the last year plus, or however long it's been since ChatGPT was launched. And that's this thing that we call a pre-prompt. So you'll kind of see an example of what this document looks like over here. And if you've ever created content for clients before, you've likely had a brand guide. So it's very, very similar to that. It's something that outlines the brand's voice, style, all that stuff. You probably have one for your own brand if you've created content for yourself. And a pre-prompt is a lot like that. It's honestly, it's a living document and it contains all of the different up-to-date information about a brand that you might need when you're sitting down to create that content. So things like slogans, your mission, vision, so on and so forth. And the key here is that it's a document that you can quickly copy and paste from when you're working in ChatGPT or another large language model like Claude. So instead of explaining your brand each and every time, which can be super time consuming, or even worse, barely giving ChatGPT like any context at all, which can really lead to some pretty poor content, all you're going to do is grab the parts of your pre-prompt that you need for your chat session and then go. So it takes seconds basically to train the model on your brand so you can get to the good stuff, which is creating content or researching or doing any of those things that you want to do. So the thing that makes this actually super special is that this pre-prompt actually presents the information to the large language model in the way that it needs. So it presents it in a way that it can best understand because we're actually going to use it to create it. And that's really sort of the crux of the issue here, the thing that makes it so special. So every time that I go into this topic, I'm asked, well, why can't I just fill in the blanks on the pre-prompt document and describe my brand? Why do I have to go through this process of creating this pre-prompt with ChatGPT? It's a totally valid question. I am no prompt engineer, as you'll see, but I've discussed this with actually quite a few of them to try to understand why this process works so darn well. And the reason that it's so important to go through this process is because good prompt engineering is about kind of providing optimized input for the desired output, right? So a summary that's crafted by the AI itself is really likely to be optimized for the AI to kind of understand and use as a basis for future content creation. So using the summary that AI has helped create means that it's inherently structured in a way that's more compatible with the AI's underlying algorithm. So the results are bound to be better. A lot of that has to do with the language that's used. The language is optimized basically for its own understanding and its own capabilities. So when it processes its own language patterns, it's basically a well-organized data structure that it can easily parse and utilize efficiently. It also comes down to terminology and concepts. So AI-generated summaries are a lot more likely to include terminology and concepts that the model's already identified as really key to the topic. So those terminologies and concepts might be weighted more heavily in its internal representations. So just all around winds up being more accurate and more aligned with your intentions. It's also giving you a very dense but concise summary. So that really high information density is something that, models like ChatGPT can work with super effectively. It provides a lot of context in a really, really compact form. AI summaries are also a lot less ambiguous, and they are really great at clarifying the intent of something, which is super important for the algorithms to be able to generate those really accurate responses. So when you provide your own summary, there might be more room for interpretation, which can lead to a little bit less precise output, I guess you could say. So you're basically using a format that's already trained to interface effectively with the AI's programming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is. I mean, I think it's interesting. I just wanted to jump
Yeah.
in. I like what you're sharing. Also, it's like I use the analogy of having an intern a lot of times. I've said
Yeah.
that before in different session. It's the same with AI, right? You're not just gonna. I mean, basically, you're asking a question to an intern. It's not gonna give you a good
Right.
response to this task. Like writing a blog post, write about this topic. They are probably
Right.
gonna do a crappy job. And the same thing with the AI. You need to give a little bit more to it, and then you can get better output as you shared. So I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a really, really great analogy for it. And, we try to set up for success. And so you'll kind of see, and at the end, you're going to see an example of what happens when we do use this process to create content or to brainstorm content in this case, versus what happens when we just kind of take the traditional approach and give it a persona and dive right in, which is sort of the way that a lot of us have been taught to navigate this process. So what we're going to kind of cover today, and is we'll do it as quickly as we can. I promise that last slide is about as techie as we're going to get this whole time. But we're going to learn how to create this thing. Again, it's kind of become the secret sauce for creating really on-brand content in our agency. We're going to talk about how to use it. It really has so many different use cases. You can brainstorm and draft all kinds of marketing content, social captions, sales pages. Today, we're going to work with it to actually come up with some blog topics for a really, really, really niche market, which was really hard to do before. And then we're actually going to talk about how to work with ChatGPT and similar tools like a thought partner. I really, truly believe that that's kind of the superpower of these tools is to treat them like you said, an intern, like a thought partner, something to bounce ideas off of and, kind of have this iterative approach to how you, communicate with it. So how we're going to get from point A to point B in record time here. First, we're going to talk about the essential prep. And this is the stuff that we've got to have handy and the stuff that we need to really understand in order to tackle this process and create a pre-prompt. We're also going to talk about the process of building a pre-prompt, the method of prompting and clarifying that we're going to use to get the most accurate output from ChatGPT. That's super, super important. And then after that, I'm going to show you again how to use it and how I use it each day to kind of create this on-brand copy that's just been a total game changer for me. So this is going to feel like a lot of theory at first, but there's a reason for that. I really want to shift your understanding of how to work with ChatGPT for the biggest impact here. I want you to go from a vending machine mentality, like put prompt in, get content out, to understanding that ChatGPT's superpower is as a thought partner, like I said before. So this process is really flexible, actually. There's no one right way to do this, and yours might not wind up looking exactly like mine. So the thing that I want you to keep in mind here is that the true power is in the process. And this process, the way that we work with ChatGPT during this chat, can be applied to so many different goals besides content creation. I honestly use it probably just as much for researching, brainstorming, diving into understanding your audience. The other day, I really used it to kind of redefine my brand a little bit. I was feeling stuck. And so I used this same kind of method to have it interview me and ask me questions about my brand so that I could kind of rediscover my purpose and my why around this. So there's just so many applications for this process, and it's just as important as the pre-prompt document we're going to create, if not more so. And that said, this is not a list of prompts that's going to magically deliver authentic copy. I'm really sorry. It's something that takes organization and preparation and a little bit of work. It's not as simple as a small shift in how you structure your prompts, but I can promise you that it works. Again, we use it across all of our AI content clients and our agency. And, for myself and my brands, it is scalable, it's repeatable. And once your work is done, it's done. You really only need to update it as your business evolves. So at my agency at iHeart Content, we work this into our onboarding process. And our onboarding surveys are actually designed to collect all the information that we need to lay the foundation for that pre-prompt. So let's talk about that foundation. We need to get some information together before we can start this process. First, we need to have a clear understanding of goals and objectives, or the goals and objectives of your clients if you're doing this for your clients. We need to understand what the core offerings are, the products, services, and who we're serving, our audience. And to kick it all off, we really need a description of all of the above. The description doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be a polished piece of content. All it has to do is explain the things that I mentioned above, those core elements of your business. In the example we're going to dive into, you'll see that I just copy and pasted the content from the homepage of the brand's website, and we started with that. That's a perfectly viable option if it speaks authentically to what the brand does. Again, it doesn't have to be pretty. For my audience and personas, this is actually really cool. I use this process to have ChatGPT help me define them. Because in the case of this brand, I didn't really have them mapped out before. So that's a key thing to understand here. If you're thinking like, well, I don't really have a fully fleshed out brand guide that defines my audience, or maybe you're in the process of making a change and your existing content doesn't really represent what you ultimately want to publish, that's totally fine. You can use this process to have ChatGPT help define your audience and your brand voice, or whatever it is that you're lacking in the existing description of your business. So one last thing before we actually dive into executing this in ChatGPT, this is the basic process that we're going to be following throughout the chat. And really, it's the process I use in every single chat, no matter what I'm working on. So we'll be repeating these cycles as needed. And basically what we do is we first set the expectation for the chat when we start. Most importantly, we're going to tell it why we're having the chat to begin with. We do this for a really particular reason. We want to be sure that moving forward, ChatGPT is looking at the information we give it through the proper lens. So this is also when you can give it a role to play if you want, like expert brand strategist, for example, and you can change that throughout the chat. I usually don't start with that. I usually like to use that throughout the course of the chat, but you definitely have that option if you really need it to look at it from a particular perspective. After that, we give it our reference content. That's all the content that we collected before, piece by piece. So once we paste that reference content in, you'll see this in the demonstration in a moment. We're going to ask some kind of prompt at the end of our input, whether it's a clarifying question or asking for a summary. We do this for two reasons. First, if we don't do this and we don't give it instructions, it might just ramble off in a different direction and that we don't want it to take. So we want to give it that really specific instruction at the end. But also, we do this so that we give it a chance to mess up so that we can correct it. When we're building a pre-prompt, we really, really want ChatGPT to mess up. We want it to misunderstand our brand horribly. We want to really uncover those misconceptions that it has about the brand or the industry or whatever it is, so that we can be sure that we're not carrying over those misconceptions into our final pre-prompt document. So once we have those misconceptions and we correct them and explain why the output was incorrect, we then incorporate that corrected information into our project as we're working before continuing and repeating the cycle as needed. Again, I know this is a lot of information. All right, so let's get to building here. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to use one of my brands to demonstrate this process. And it's a pretty niche market. It's an equestrian business directory focused on a very particular part of the horse world. Hunter jumper shows, specifically in Ocala and Wellington, Florida, and Tryon, North Carolina. We're talking about something called the A circuit, which is kind of like the elite competition circuit here in the United States. If you happen to be a horse person watching this, specifically someone who does this kind of riding, and you've ever tried to create content around it, you know that you will probably wind up with a lot of things that are not aligned with your brand at all. A lot of yeehaws and cowboy ups and things like that that are just not related to the world of English riding or this kind of horseback riding. So we're going to solve that with this process today. All right, our first step, as I mentioned before, we're going to set the stage and tell ChatGPT what we're about to do so it processes the information through the proper lens. I always start with something like, I'm going to tell you about my business, then I'd like you to help me create a summary that I can use in future chats to bring you up to speed on my business. I'll ask it if it's ready and submit the prompt. And then while it does that, we're going to go ahead and paste in that raw information and ask it to summarize it. Again, it doesn't have to be pretty or polished. I'm just grabbing the basic description from my brand's website and I'm closing that prompt with some instructions asking it to summarize my business, again, with the intention of having it mess up so that we can catch any issues here. So it did a pretty good job, with an initial description here. It's pretty accurate. Not a whole lot in there that needs to be corrected. And then after that, we're just going to kind of go through and again, make sure, like I said, that it looks good and that there's no serious errors to correct. Usually at this point, I kind of find that it's pretty spot on. So what I like to do here is, again, trying to uncover those errors and those mistakes and misunderstandings. I ask it some questions to make sure that it really understands what my business is all about, especially if it's a niche market like this. So in this case, I'm going to ask it if it knows what the A circuit is. Now, it got it mostly right here, but it also made a mistake and left out one key thing, which is equitation. It's just another style of riding that's usually lumped in with this competitive circuit. So I'm going to correct it, explain what it got wrong so that it knows, and then this is important, I'm going to ask it to restate its summary. All in all, it did a great job. Again, it just missed that one thing, but it's really important to correct it in this stage and then ask it to restate its answer so we can be sure that it's internalizing this new information and kind of updating its memory. We really don't want it to carry that error over into another chat when it actually is time to create that content. So the next step is basically to continue this process. You want to really dive in and think of other things that you might not understand about your business. You can think about what are some questions that your audience usually gets wrong about your business. Think about the things that are super important to your business. For example, mine's focused on really specific geographic areas: Wellington, Florida, Tryon, North Carolina, and Ocala, Florida. So I'm going to ask it to tell me about those locations and the big horse show venues associated with them so I can see if it really understands them. It did a really good job with my first one, Wellington, and with Tryon, it got it mostly right. It just had one little phrase that felt off to me. And again, it might be small, but again, we need to correct these so that it's as accurate as possible. In this case, what it said was that the World Equestrian Games was like the Olympics for horse sports. That's not really accurate. The Olympics are the Olympics for horse sport. So I'm going to give it my feedback and basically just tell it that, talk to it, and ask it again to restate that summary so it internalizes that information before moving on to my next location. So then once we're sure that it has those basics right, you can start diving in deeper. This is a really good time to dive into your audience. I'm going to ask it to describe who it thinks my audience might be. Then, as long as it looks accurate, I'm going to go ahead and ask it to create a list of personas based on those, including things like their key pain points and how my brand can help solve it. We're going to go into their psychographic, demographic, and situational data, all things that us marketers love to have in order to be able to create content for a particular subset of our audience. Now, it did a pretty good job with that list, but there's a few things that I want to correct. In this case, I didn't feel like seasonal residents were a group I really want to target. But I do want to target real estate agents who specialize in seasonal rentals for the equestrian community. So I'm going to give it that feedback and ask it, as always, to restate that list so we can be sure that we're capturing everything. I also wanted it to include local non-horse related businesses who wanted to gain exposure to the equestrian community. So I'm going to tell it that as well. And again, as always, I'm restating the list before moving on. So it's just
Are
going to
you on
restate.
just a question? Are you
Yeah.
on the plus plan of ChatGPT?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually made this process a lot easier. So a lot of the stuff that you see us kind of doing in this example of like having it restate things, we have that as part of our process because before we would hit that context window. And so by constantly having it restate, what it is that we're talking about, we're kind of trying to outsmart the context window a little bit. The context window being that memory that ChatGPT has.
And now you can have 300-page
And
book.
now
You
it's
know, you
like
can have a
300
crazy.
pages.
It's like Claude
Yeah.
basically, but
Oh,
with the GPT. But I do like that because your process I think could work really well with the new. But I think the GPT is like customizing your own agents. Imagine this
exactly.
process is like taken care of more or less with the help of this automated process.
It's so I can't like my brain has just been absolutely swimming with ideas for this. But yes, we do have some plans that we're going to be diving into specifically around those GPTs and getting them listed in that GPT store that they were talking about. Again, that revenue sharing is going to be for the ones that are the most useful and the most popular. So I think a lot of us in the marketing space right now are really digging deep to figure out, okay, what do we need to do? So,
Exactly.
but this process is the first thing I thought when I saw that. I was watching the live stream when they announced it at the Dev Day, and this process is really perfect for that. Like, if we could take this information that we gather and build a GPT out of it for each of our clients, we don't have to worry about copying and pasting anything. We just go into our GPT and work from there.
Yeah.
So it's
Exactly. So
exciting.
let's continue with your
Yeah.
process here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So just to recap, we just finished kind of going through and asking it to create, kind of dive into our audience a little bit. And I gave it some corrections. I wanted it to include real estate agents and also non-horse related businesses who want to get exposure to that equestrian community. And then, of course, as always, I had it restate the list before moving on. And the next thing I'm going to do is what I like to call the tell me everything you know prompt. And the exact prompt that I use here is, please tell me everything you know about the Ecklist. Respond in first person using we where possible as if you are part of the Ecklist team and an expert marketing and business development professional with deep knowledge of the equestrian world. So this is kind of that traditional prompt structure that we've talked about before where I'm giving it a persona here, but what I'm trying to do now is now that I have everything up to my audience defined and I've gone through that process, I want to see how it would describe my business as if it were a member of my team. So we did that. It gave us our response. And now assuming that everything is accurate and we don't need to correct it, we can just start asking it to format the information appropriately for that pre-prompt document so that we can get to creating content. All I'm doing here is basically copying the format exactly from that blank pre-prompt template that you'll all have access to and asking ChatGPT to summarize the information in the format provided. I want it to keep the titles and the structure intact. And then once I have it, I'll just paste it over into my pre-prompt document so that we have it handy when we need it. Now, you'll see that it created a tagline for me here right there. I probably won't use that one. This is an example of something that you could spend some time brainstorming with ChatGPT, and I've done that quite a lot, using the same process. But in the interest of time, we're going to run with it for now. It's not awful, but I probably want to spend some time brainstorming something like that. So I'll just go section by section here and, keep its output short. That way, if there's any errors along the way, I don't have to backtrack too far. So I always start with that brand overview section. And then here we're just continuing to that next section. We're going to copy the formatting for our products and services and ask it to fill it in before bringing that over to our pre-prompt document. As always, even at this stage, we're checking for errors, making corrections as needed, but chances are you won't run into a whole lot by this point. A few weeks ago, again, as we talked about before, you might have, but since that context window of ChatGPT's memory was upgraded to what equates to like 300 standard pages, we don't really tend to run into too much forgetfulness anymore. I've been testing this out pretty extensively the past couple of days to see what would happen. And, we're not running into those issues as much as we did before.
I asked the question around this. Do you feel like with the hallucinations and things like that, have you run into that? Or maybe with this
Yes.
process, I think it doesn't happen as much either, right? So
Well, we want it to happen in the beginning of this process, and that's
yeah,
part of what we're doing. Now, I've
yeah,
done this example with this brand so many times that to a certain extent, it's probably learned quite a lot about this brand. But when I first did it, it would do some it would have some hallucinations. Like it would hallucinate the name of the main venue in Wellington, or it hallucinated, a stat that said that the Winter Equestrian Festival, which is the biggest competition, series down there, was one of the oldest horse shows in the world. I mean, we're in the United States. There's no way we have one of the oldest horse shows
yeah.
in the world. Certainly, it's one of the biggest, but not one of the
But then
oldest.
you go through the process and it corrects itself. Basically, you correct it
Yeah,
along the way.
you teach it, you tell it
Yeah,
what's wrong, why it's wrong, and then you ask it to restate with the right information. And then after
yeah.
you've done that, you really don't run into that issue anymore. And that's why it's so important to try to like break it, basically to try to get it to misunderstand your business in that early stage. Because we want to correct it so that we don't carry it over into that document. So again, we're just going to follow the same process to kind of wrap this up. We're only going to go down to the general audience description and personas at this point. You'll see in the document when you get it that there's all kinds of other things that you can brainstorm and research in here, like SEO keywords and all kinds of stuff. But for now, I'm just going to basically copy the format from my blank pre-prompt document for my audience description and personas, and just ask it to basically plug that info in to that exact format before copying it over to my document. So there we go. It's basically just formatting it exactly as it should. And I'm just going to do a quick copy and paste over here. And it is now loaded into my pre-prompt document for me to use to actually create some content with. So that is the process of kind of compiling that pre-prompt document. So now that we have that actually prepped, we can move on to the really fun stuff. So you can have, again, what I said before, you can use what you have so far to do all kinds of things. You can use that pre-prompt to start really digging into your personas, generating pain points or objections. That's one that I really love to do. Come up with objections that your prospects might have and ask ChatGPT to basically help you come up with content to bust those objections. You can work on keyword research to see what you should be targeting in your SEO efforts, whatever it is. And the list is really, truly endless. The pre-prompt is the start of it all, at least for us here in our agency. And at least if you really want answers that align with your brand. So today, to keep this brief, what I'm going to do is show you how we can use this document, this pre-prompt, to start brainstorming some blog topics. And then at the end, I'm going to show you the difference between the topic ideas we get when we start with a pre-prompt versus those that we get when we start without it. So this will be a real quick process. We're just going to breeze through this real fast. As you're going to see, it's the same process. It starts the exact same way that we started before with our pre-prompt. We're setting the stage so it knows what we're up to, and we're going to confirm that it's ready to start. That's going to give us a chance to go grab our pre-prompt, everything from that brand overview section all the way down to our audience insights. And then we're going to paste that into ChatGPT and close with some instructions. In this case, I'm going to ask it to act as an expert content marketing strategist with deep knowledge of the equestrian community and come up with 30 blog topics that are likely to resonate deeply with my audience. I'm also specifying that I don't want topics that will require me to create additional content, like conduct interviews, for example, or create case studies. I don't really want to get into creating more content right here. So it's already given me these 30 topics right here. So from there, it's just a matter of basically treating ChatGPT like the thought partner that it is and asking it anything you want to know about those topics before moving on to outlining, drafting, editing, and publishing. All of those are things I break down in detail in my micro course, Brainstorm to Blog. And one of the things that I really like to do here is take some of the topics that I'm super curious about and basically just ask what the talking points would be on some of the topics so I can get a sense of the direction it might take with the topic. As always, you can always give it feedback at this stage. It's a good idea to tell it which topics you loved, which ones you didn't, and why, and then ask it to create a few more to replace the ones you didn't love. A quick note on that, one of the things that you'll often hear a lot of other AI educators recommend is to use more like this prompt. So, for example, you might hear them say, you take the list of topics that you really love, and then you ask ChatGPT to create more topics like that. I actually don't like to use that method because I feel like what happens when I do that is that I get a list of topics that are very similar to the ones that I already have in structure and or in the persona that it's targeting or in the funnel stage that it's targeting, that kind of thing. So I try to keep it as open-ended as possible in the brainstorming phase. So I might say, I really love these topics, but I don't really like these topics because XYZ. Can you create some more topics to replace the ones I don't love? That way it's not honing in on and focusing on the structure and the content of the ones that you love specifically. It's just pulling from a much broader pool of topic ideas that you can then continue to kind of whittle down and refine. So that's pretty much it. There you have it. Honestly, in a few minutes, we have a list of 30 super on-brand blog topics to start working with that are really incredibly accurately aligned with my audience. They cover all my personas. It's pretty cool. That is the power of the pre-prompt. And, every time I do this, I'm kind of blown away by just how on brand these topics are for my audience. And it used to be a really difficult process to get topics that aligned with, the equestrian community or my corner of the equestrian community, you could say. Like I said before, no matter what I did, using these traditional prompting methods, I would always wind up with topics about rodeos, cowboys, or content with lots of yeehaws and cowboy ups and things that are not related to the hunter jumper community. So along those lines, let's kind of take a look at some of the different topics. So you can see here the difference between the two. On the left, we have the topics created with the pre-prompt. And on the right, the ones we created with a basic prompt that was something along the lines of, I run an equestrian directory. Please act as an expert content marketing strategist and come up with 30 blog topics likely to resonate with my audience. So you can see we've got some rodeo references, trail riding references, and something for beginner riders. They're not bad topics, honestly, but they're not designed for my audience at all. In contrast, the topics on the left created with the pre-prompt are super, super focused on my audience and likely to resonate really, really well. And because I invested that initial time to create this pre-prompt document, I can now create an entire year's worth of topics in just a few minutes.
Can you break down a little bit the process before AI? Because I think it's interesting for people to see how much time you're saving. Now you can do this in a few minutes because you went through your pre-prompt power method, formula, whatever you like to call it, right? And you have this document, which is really cool. But how was it before this?
I think I've blocked out how it was before as a copywriter and a content creator before AI. I kind of don't ever want to go back to those days. We still do a lot of non-AI content creation. We're really, really big on transparency. So we don't ever create AI content for clients that are not specifically and explicitly opted in for AI content because everyone feels different ways about it. But that said, the process for creating, let's just say a blog, especially if it's an unfamiliar industry, because one of the things that I always say is that I'm somebody who I write about topics I know nothing about. And I had a really good system in place for learning about those topics and learning about those industries that I didn't know anything about before. I mean, I've written content for Acronis SCS. I've written for, blockchain stuff that just was not in my wheelhouse at all. And I was able to do it authentically and accurately and with authority because of the process that I had before. But that process really involved a lot of research. Literally hours and hours of research. And so now when I take on a client in an industry that's unfamiliar, that hours of research is really condensed down to a single chat session. Now, you have to verify everything that you get from AI, right? Like you learn kind of what sorts of things you can trust and what sorts of things you can't. And there are ways to kind of stop some of the hallucinations and things like that. Now that you have browsing, LinkedIn with the current, model of GPT-4 Turbo, it makes it a lot easier. But these days, if I were to get, an Acronis again, basically, something along those lines, I would then tell it, I would go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I don't know anything about public sector cybersecurity in the United States. Can you teach me about this? Ask me about it and basically have it kind of ask me about my understanding and have it act as a teacher. So that's my process now. I mean, we design our onboarding in the agency to collect all the information about the brand that we need. But in order to know, if you're not creating content for your brand, you're creating content for a client, in order to know what good content looks like, you do have to understand the industry to a certain extent. You have to know what are those trustworthy sources and things like that. So that was always a really key part of our process before, was collecting a list of, what are the sources that we can count on in your industry? And then almost more importantly, what are the sources we can't count on in your industry so that we know
Yeah.
who to avoid? Um,
I
but
think something that's I just wanted to share, like something that's interesting is Google was initially like a little bit against AI content, but now they just want really good content, really amazing content. I think that is also something I don't know how it is for your clients, but what is really AI generated content? For example, I like specialized tools for that because I like to write really in-depth content, really great that can rank in Google and stuff like that. I don't know if you know about this. Maybe it's great for your agency. Content at scale. It's
mhm,
amazing. Like you enter a keyword or like even this video, we're taking like the YouTube link from this, enter it in there. It spits out this post that is 100%. I mean, I don't need to do anything. Like
yeah,
that's crazy to me. I mean, with your process combined with this, I'm sure it's even better. But like you can like add some stuff to it. It's just a few questions basically, and just based on the keywords spitting this out, and then you get like this 3,000 word blog post or something like that. So it's really
yeah,
quick, and I think like you add your personality to this, it's finished. Like you add maybe 15% more, it's done. So I don't know if a client would really tell, I mean, you can mention it. I mean, we're using AI tools, but that's the future. I think that's not going to be it. I mean, I don't know what your input on this is based on
yeah.
your clients and things you work with, but really, I think like everything we do will have AI will be a part of that. And I think the people who will stand out, they're using a human touch to it. So it's
Yeah.
human like content.
Right. And that's part of the reason. So I've used a lot of those other tools, content at scale. I've trialed all of them. In a lot of cases, I've gotten in on the beta tests of a lot of them as well, because I am so interested. And they're great, great tools. What I've found is, for me, from a scalable perspective, as a small agency, like a boutique agency, sticking with ChatGPT gives me more control over the exact output. And for me, it's just very fun to use. I have, again, like I said, I've used all of them, and there is absolutely a place for them. They do a content at scale in particular. They
Did
create
you
great
try it
content.
recently? Because I tried some of these tools when they came out. And I think Jasper, I don't use anymore. I don't have
Yeah.
anything. I like the team and stuff like that. I don't,
Hmm.
but I see like tools that are like have a clear use case, like content at scale. I had Julie McCoy on the summit sessions, this series
Yeah.
basically, and basically she was blown away because there's like the model has improved so much over just a few months. So if you use this,
Yes.
like maybe you weren't impressed 6 months ago because I wasn't impressed initially with some of the
Right.
content different AI tools created. But
Yeah.
now with certain tools, I'm pretty impressed. Like, wow, they created this affiliate post that would normally take me
Oh,
a
I
long
think I lost
time
you
and I can
again.
add my personality to it. So that's pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I and I have I the last time I really was diving into that one was just a few months ago. So I am excited to dive into it again. I'm always, especially as we scale our agency, we really do need something specifically for our own content, to kind of get that scalability up a little bit. Because this is still more of a manual process. And I guess in some way I haven't let go of that, wanting that control over the
Yeah.
content that we create. But, another factor here is that, where it concerns clients and how they feel about AI, like I mentioned, we're super transparent about it, and we're open to, there's certain clients that, we just don't touch AI for them, and there's certain clients that we do. But we're always about trying to educate them on, this is really truly how it's moving. This is the future, and we're not going to be able to avoid it. And trying to show them, and like part of the reason that I talk so much about this process so that my clients can also see that there's a lot of thought that goes into this. There's a lot of intentional action that happens in order to, get to this point where we can then create authentic content for them. So we're not just like plugging in some keywords and just cranking it out and that's it. Like we're still really hands on with this process because we want to know our clients inside and out. And ChatGPT has just made it easier for us to do that. And really, you're absolutely right that this process can be used with pretty much any tool, any kind of chat based large language model, that it's designed for writing content. You can absolutely do it. I think the only thing that I found limiting in some of the third party tools is when they get really into the brand voice thing. I've not found one yet that can truly, truly replicate a very particular brand voice. And again, I need to try them all again. I'm always kind of on this cycle of testing them out. And Content at Scale was absolutely one that did a great job of it even before. So
Yeah,
I'm
but it's
excited to
it's
see.
it's like you need to know the use case. Like that's for blogging. I
Yes.
wouldn't use it for everything. Like I
No,
think
no.
like ChatGPT is like $20 a month, right? Content at
Right.
Scale is like hundreds, if not they have a
Right.
plan that is like
For
1,500 pages.
SEO, if you need to create like a content at scale, it's the perfect name, truly. If you need to create that, at scale and produce a lot of content for rankings and it's very targeted with keywords, then absolutely, like that is a great way to go. So it really just depends, but when we're talking about thought leadership content, which is a lot of what we do a lot of thought leadership ghostwriting. That's kind of one of the big things that we do here in the agency. And so we really have to be super aware of that brand voice and make sure that we're really, really dialed in there so that it's authentically um, essentially coming from our client's mouth or could come from our client's mouth.
Yeah, no, 100% I agree. And it's like AI optimized in a way, or like
Yes.
even if you're not using AI for the full process, you're using it as an assistant in part of the process,
Hmm.
depending on what it is. Like certain things, maybe
Yeah.
the AI is not doing too well. Maybe you like need to write this amazing story, so you're not involving AI too much, but maybe you
Yep.
came up with the hook, maybe you come up with the structure with AI. So I
Yes.
think AI is always going to play a role in some of the content workflow. I think, like, for
It's
example, I
I'm frozen
enjoy
again.
doing these sessions, but I'm not enjoying adding tags and descriptions to my YouTube channel. So the AI is going to take care of that, and it does a great job. So
Yes.
yeah,
AI for YouTube is awesome. I mean, we do a lot of content repurposing, and that's been a huge part of, it's saving us time. We work with YouTubers, and so we'll take the transcript from from their videos, and we'll plug it into ChatGPT and spit out, a bunch of other content that's just so perfectly aligned with their brand and their business because it's taking their words and then creating more content around it. So it's just there's so many different options, and like you said, there's so many different third party tools that are designed specifically for a use case. So I think everyone should try them all. Honestly, I every time a new one comes out, I'm all over it. So,
so you primarily use, I guess, ChatGPT. Do you use any other tools that are maybe not just like large language models, but I'm talking
yeah,
like in general, like in your business that have maybe some AI features
yes,
that's helping you?
yes. Part of the reason that we're so married to ChatGPT is, as I mentioned, we're a bilingual agency, so we're English and Spanish. My team's based between the United States, Argentina, and Venezuela. And we're
Oh,
all
really?
bilingual on
Very
our
interesting.
team. And so we need that flexibility in languages, right? So ChatGPT actually does a really good job of it. But you've probably seen HeyGen, and their AI avatars. So we've had a lot of fun with that. I was actually able to get in on the beta test of that when they first were developing that the newest version of their AI avatars that does the voice cloning. And in fact, I have a video on my YouTube channel of me sitting right here, I think wearing the same shirt, looking exactly like this, training their model basically on 2 minutes of my video and my voice. And so, while I've only used the output from that to kind of demonstrate just like where AI is going, I recently did start using it in the back end of some of my courses where I felt like we did need, a welcome video, but I hadn't had time to get in front of a camera or something like that. And, within the context of what we do, being so focused on AI, it's totally appropriate. But on the language side, you've probably seen the videos kind of going viral all over the place of the translation videos, right? So being a bilingual agency, we wanted to test that out. I wanted to see, hey, can I take all this video content that I've produced in English, for my courses, for my YouTube channel, for my social channels, feed it into HeyGen and have it change it to Spanish without me having to refilm the video? And the answer was yeah. It did an absolutely fantastic job of it.
Yeah.
The only issue that we had, and it wasn't even really an issue, was that when I speak Spanish, I speak with a Venezuelan accent because that's where I learned Spanish, and my husband's Venezuelan, and we speak Venezuelan Spanish at home. I lived down there for a long time, and it gave me a slightly different accent, but it was still my voice, and it was matching up, my lips to the Spanish words. So that, I think, is probably the next thing that we're really going to be diving into in
Interesting.
terms of something that's not a large language model.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think that's going to be a game changer. Also, like for YouTube, they care about retention. I think a lot of these things are going to be integrated natively into the platforms because if someone is coming to our video now, yeah, you
Yeah.
speak Spanish. My Spanish is broken. That's another thing. I've been to Venezuela actually. I've
Oh,
been
yeah.
all around. So I know all about this. But just on this, I think like if someone coming to this video, yeah, they can check the captions, they can do it, but that's not the same thing as connecting and seeing our lip synced in
Yeah.
Spanish or something like that. I think that is the
Yeah.
next thing. I think the platforms will integrate this. I don't know exactly when it's gonna come and when it's gonna be cost effective to do it on a longer video. A lot
Yeah.
of the big YouTubers, they dub their channels, but that's still not the same. It's like it's still very expensive, and now
Yeah.
with this new technology, over time is going to be more cost effective. I don't know if you have some inputs.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we're already doing, because like you said, there's a lot of processing power that goes into those actual videos where it's syncing up your lips. And so dubbing is still an option, but at the same time, without having to sit there and record the audio and, reproduce the video, that's a little challenging. So one of the things that we've kind of done with some of the things where we leverage audio specifically for audiograms and things like that, or snippets of podcasts or things that I want to help, promote on my channels, I'm still using HeyGen and the instant avatar, but I'll go in and write my script in Spanish and it's going to produce it in my voice. And I've actually found ways to tweak it so that it replicates my accent. So like in Venezuela, that you don't say S's a whole lot. So instead of saying
Mhm.
especial, I tweak the script so that it says
Yeah.
especial, like with an H almost instead of an S.
Yeah.
So, we've used some of that as well and then just use the audio from it. But I really do think that on this translation thing, we're moving so close to real-time translation. And when we have that, I mean, that's going to be an absolute game changer in terms of just how we relate to people around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, think that if we can watch any piece of content in our own language, how much more we can understand people and other cultures and relate to them. And it just kind of eliminates some of the borders in a lot of ways. And I think that's a really hopeful thing and something that
Can
I'm
reach
really
so
looking
many
forward
people.
to.
We can reach so many people with our message that wouldn't otherwise find us. Because
Yeah.
in Venezuela, most people don't speak a word of English. I mean, it's like that. The same in most Latin America. They don't speak too much English. So they're not gonna resonate. And I think a lot of that's something on their. I mean, I know a lot of people from Venezuela and these Latin countries. They have more like entertainment content. They don't have as much education as the English speaking world. To be honest, like
It's
that's
changed a
sad
lot
a
in
little bit.
recent years.
It has improved.
It's improved a lot. Yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot of our team is based in Latin America, and our teams again, they speak English, they speak Spanish, and sometimes other languages as well. So I find that they're consuming a lot of English language content on the education side, but especially in Venezuela, where it's been so important for people to kind of get scrappy and make a living, in different
Yeah.
non-traditional routes. I've seen so many Spanish language courses launched, in just the last couple of years. Courses on social media management, on really anything you can think of. And a lot of people are doing really, really, really well with that because
Yeah.
they realize like, yeah, there is this need for people to, become entrepreneurs and to, work in kind of a non-traditional way. And so that's been really cool to kind of see this side of things, like the AI side of things, really facilitating that. It's
Nice.
changed the lives of a lot of people that I personally know in Venezuela who were really struggling
A
before
lot.
because of the
That's
situation
amazing
there.
because I know Venezuela is crazy expensive. It's not even a cheap
Yes.
country. It's like I mean, some housing can be cheap, but the food is expensive, the travel is expensive, everything is
Everything's in
expensive. I've been
dollars.
to Canaima and these places. They're
Oh,
the
yeah.
most expensive places you would ever go. Like trust me, on this one.
If you're
It's like
coming
the
from
most.
abroad, it's okay, but if you're
No, but
there and
even
you're
even for like
earning
I'm comparing it to like Dubai or something like that. It's the
Oh,
same
yeah.
prices. It's basically the
Yeah.
same. But so yeah, a few final questions. I think I have two more questions for you. Is what's the number one piece of advice you would give to a creator, solopreneur, or digital business owner when it comes to getting started to leverage AI in their business?
Yeah, I think I would just say to not be afraid of it and to kind of dive in. It can be really intimidating to get started, but there's a lot of resources out there. And, summits like this and events like this are just one of the best ways that you can really, the best steps that you can take to really get started because you're going to have all of this knowledge, kind of condensed into one place. And there's a lot of them these days. This one is probably one of the best that I've seen in terms of the lineup. So I'm super excited about it. I know I'm going to be learning a lot from it as well. So it's out there. The information is out there, and just step into it. Take it one step at a time, and focus really closely on what are the use cases that are going to make a difference in your life and your business, and go down that rabbit hole so that you don't get yourself overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great final words. So where can people connect more with you? Where's the best place? I'll leave some links in the description as well for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me over on Instagram at Marketing Mastery AI. My website is marketingmastery.ai, and I have a number of different resources and programs over there. Lots of free stuff, just to kind of help you get started from AI copywriting and things of that nature. I'm over on YouTube, but basically you can get all my links over on the website or Instagram, and yeah, connect with me over there. I would love to meet some of the folks that are here today joining us.
For sure. That's awesome. I leave some in the description, and be sure to leave your biggest takeaway for this session as well. We talked about quite a lot of different things, but if you have any takeaways or comments, do let us know. Subscribe to the channel for more, like the video, and I'll see you in the next session. Ciao for now.